Students will never say, "Thank you for the quiz, I really liked it." No, it seems that creating an assessment is a thankless but necessary job. Now, for years now, we at ReelDx have been creating assessments on our real patient video cases, and we've learned a thing, or 10, which we'd like to share with you in this video. Now, Googling this question yields such unhelpful advice as, ensure that the assessment is fair and unbiased. Great, but how? Or provide feedback to students on their performance. Oh, really? Students learn from feedback. So we've tried to make our advice non-obvious. Now, 2 notes about these tips off the top. First is, though we followed luminary organizations such as CAPC and other accrediting bodies, most of our tips have come from trial and error. And second, we're using real patient video cases as the basis of our assessments, but whether you want to assess comprehension of a case or reinforce other concepts, we've got a guide and a worksheet for you to download, along with today's video. Now, without further ado, here are the 10 lessons we've learned the hard way from writing dozens of assessments. Tip 1, microlearning. Each case and assessment should work roughly in 15-minute chunks, which will be enough to force students to focus on the material, but not so long that they lose interest. If a typical assessment question takes about a minute, depending on the complexity, that means students will learn best when an assessment is no more than 5 to 10 questions long. 2, don't be too simple. True-false questions fall into this category. It doesn't really fully test recall, comprehension, application, or much of anything. 3, follow a consistent format. For our questions at ReelDx, we use either 4 answer choices, 1 is correct, 6 answer choices where multiple could be correct, or a self-assessment question, which is open-ended. You want learners to focus on the content, not the format. Similarly, tip 4, don't try to trick learners with the question stem. That means no all of the above, none of the above, not. Asking questions about what's not correct just draws attention to the wrong information. So design your assessments to reinforce learning, not to provide gotchas for students. 5, every wrong answer should have a teaching point too. Obviously, we want to guide learners to the right answer, but wrong answers should be written in such a way that they draw a learner's attention to key distinctions in the case. Okay, tips 6 through 8 are a little bit obvious, so bear with me. Tip 6 is to each question should relate to the learning objectives of the lesson and of the course. You want to stay focused on what you want students to remember long after your course is over. 7, don't make it easy for students to cheat. If your software allows it, randomize the answer choices in the order of questions, and even pull questions from a larger question bank if possible. 8, be clear about your expectations. Is it open book or closed book? Or in our case, open Google or closed Google? Our assessments are all open Google since A, we can't control whether students Google the information, and B, it's more real world for students to be able to consult the search engines related to information to help them do their jobs when they're interacting with patients as a healthcare provider. Tip 9, strive for a Goldilocks level of difficulty. Too easy and students will be bored, too hard and students won't be able to answer the questions. This concept is particularly tricky for us here at ReelDx since our students run the gamut from newbies to advanced graduate students. When starting to build an assessment, we try to keep the typical learner in mind and write the questions that we think that student should be able to answer in order to demonstrate mastery of the material. Tip 10 takes a little bit of explanation, so let me try. It's to align difficulty to the learning objectives. So assessments should move from easy to complex, from questions that measure recall to those that require learners to apply what they've learned. Starting simple and building allows learners to remaster the material as they work through the assessment, shoring up the basics before they move on to harder questions. So think of order of difficulty as a continuum. Basic questions on a patient video case just test whether the learner is paying attention, such as how did the patient rate their pain on a scale of 1 to 10? In the middle of that continuum would be concept questions, testing whether students can apply what they've learned in a textbook to this specific case, such as the provider asked the patient if they had thoughts related to self-harm. How might the patient's answer to this question impact further workup and standards of care? In the far end of the continuum would be application questions, testing whether students can apply the principles of the case to a different hypothetical scenario or changing a key fact about the case in question to understand how that affects the learner's behavior. Something like, If the patient presented in the same way but could not remember what kind of food had exacerbated her pain, what diagnostic test could you perform to aid in arriving at your final diagnosis, knowing both her history and location of her pain? That hypothetical scenario shows that the student is then ready for all of the complexity of a real-world case. So we hope you found this video useful. I sure wish I had this guide when we started down this journey of writing assessments. It would have saved me a lot of trial and error and Googling. So good luck, and let me be the only one probably to say thank you for writing a great assessment.